Please give Senator Davis your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last few years in the Senate, I've really started to enjoy my work. I've worked more closely with senators on legislation, and one of the things that I found out, Senator from Oconee, and I didn't realize this, but that when you're appointed as a subcommittee chairman, you kind of take some ownership of the bill, and even if it isn't your bill, you become invested in it, and you learn about the issue, and you try to find compromises. And I have found great satisfaction in doing that, and in working with my colleagues, and in trying to find out a way to reconcile individuals who may initially have objections and ultimately get to the finish line. I take a lot of satisfaction in that. And just for instance, a senator from Lexington, I really took great pleasure in seeing your sub-minimum wage bill get third reading, and earlier, the Massage Therapy Act, and Senator Gambrell, I took great pleasure in helping you with the plastics bill and in sitting down and hammering out a compromise and making that work. And Senator from Spartanburg, the Department of Revenue and the attorney's fees, and there is a process we go through. And I say all that to say this, and I could go on, Senator Gustafson with the fire district bill, or Senator from Spartanburg, Senator Kimbrell's social media bill, Senator Cash still working on the midwives bill. I say all that to say this. For the last 7 years, I've been working on legislation to get medicine in the hands of people who need it. And I'm referring now to cannabis or marijuana, whatever, however you want to call it. And this started back in 2014 when I was first asked by one of my constituents to help get CBD oil, cannabis oil, legalized because her granddaughter had epilepsy, suffered hundreds of seizures an hour, and the CBD oil would knock out the seizures completely. And we got that bill passed. And I took great satisfaction in that, but I've been cursed ever since then because I came to know all the individuals with disabilities and with challenges and illnesses throughout the state, and there are thousands that can meaningfully benefit from cannabis in a way that pharmaceuticals cannot assist them, and whether it's cancer or multiple sclerosis or epilepsy or PTSD or chronic pain, Crohn's disease, whatever it might be. And I've gotten to know them. I've gone around the state, I've met with them, and I've been working to try to find a way to get medicine in their hands. Now, there is no dispute anymore. In case those of you who aren't really delving into this issue and haven't been working on it for 7 years, understand this. There isn't any debate any longer about whether or not cannabis can provide relief in regard to these areas, okay? All right, the 2017 report by the National Academy of Sciences looked at over 10,000 scientific abstracts, 10,000, and said that there was conclusive evidence, the highest of 5 tiers of evidence, conclusive evidence that marijuana can be of benefit to individuals in circumstances where pharmaceuticals cannot. So put out of your mind this notion that somehow marijuana or cannabis doesn't have medical qualities. It does. And anybody that says otherwise hasn't taken the time to inform themselves of the truth in that matter. That's conclusive. The second thing, and that's why you see 36 states now have legalized it for medical purposes. 36 states. Even the most conservative states, Mississippi last year, Alabama this year, the most conservative states in the nation are legalizing cannabis for medicinal purposes because it helps people who are suffering, people that I've lived with for 7 years. 7 years. Now, the argument is, well, we can't do it because the federal government back in 1970 passed the Controlled Substances Act. I'm not going to get into the sordid history of that bill, which President Nixon jammed through, and which is loaded with racial overtones, and was meant to be a stick in the eye at the anti-war left. And even though President Nixon's own medical experts said, don't schedule it, he did it anyway for that reason. But with 36 states legalizing this for medical purposes, what has the federal government done? In every way that it can, it has said, this is up to you, states. Congress, every year in the budget, passes a proviso that says none of the money that's appropriated can be used to interfere with these states that have legalized cannabis for medical purposes. The executive branch, the Department of Justice, says to the U.S. attorneys, You are not to file lawsuits against states that have legalized this for medical purposes. The federal courts recognize that this is within the plenary power of the states. So all three branches of the federal government are expressing consent. 36 states have done this. We haven't. Now, I have worked for 7 years to come up with a bill that is very, very narrow, very, very tightly regulated. The only conditions for which doctors can authorize its use are conditions for which there is strong, empirical, scientific evidence that it could be a therapeutic benefit. This isn't like some other states. This is a conservative bill because South Carolina is a conservative state. It has regulations at every step of the process: growing, processing, cultivation. It's got state-of-the-art security provisions in regard to seed-to-sale tracking. It's got provisions in regard to independent lab testing. It's got, this thing, I have looked at the 36 states that have passed this, and I've adopted the best provisions from each one to come up with a bill that's truly medical. Now, I say all that to say this. I want that bill to have the benefit of what this body can give it. I want this bill, and I want the opponents of this bill to pick it apart, just like we did with the Senator from Horry's bill in regard to the name and likeness. That passed 22 to 21, and the Senator from Charleston had strong feelings about it, and it would have been very easy for him to have blocked that bill. Senator from Edgefield, he could put his name on it. He could have carried over it. He could have killed it, but he didn't. And I'm glad he didn't, because it had the benefit of a debate in this body. That's what I want. Now, my bill, S-150, it's been on the calendar for about a week, and it's been objected to, and that's fine. I recognize that members who haven't studied this like I have need time to review this, need time to familiarize themselves with this, need time to go ahead and weigh arguments pro and against. But I'm here to tell you that come next week, I'm going to be pushing for this bill to get a hearing. After 7 years, it deserves a hearing.
Senator from Martinsburg, Senator, what purpose do you ask?
If you, the Senator, will yield.
Senator, you have a question? Yes.
Senator, I think we all understand the hard work you've put into this and the passion you bring to this, but haven't you listened over the years as people have said, but what about this and what about that? And you have adjusted this bill untold number of times, isn't that right?
It's like whack-a-mole, Senator from Orangeburg. Every time they raise a concern. For instance, SLED said, well, what we really don't like about the bill is you allow people to smoke marijuana, and that's the way people consume it recreationally. So I took smoking out.
Right.
I said it has to be an oil. Then they moved to something else.
Well, and that's my point. It doesn't seem that anything you can do to make this what arguably has to be the most conservative bill of any of the states under consideration, and it's got all the tracking mechanisms in there. It doesn't matter what you do to try and satisfy concerns. Nothing's going to happen until we debate it on this floor. Is that right?
And I want it debated on this floor because I want the collective wisdom and the collective input of everyone on this floor. I want that. I want it to be a bill that we're all proud of. But I say this in all sincerity, those people haunt me. Those people, I've got a constituent, Margaret Richardson, okay, who wakes up, she's got a nerve disorder in her face. Scott Richardson, our former colleague.
Colleague, yes.
And she wakes up and her face feels like it's on fire, and she howls like an animal in pain. That was her testimony to Medical Affairs. One bit of cannabis makes it go away. No pharmaceuticals help her. And we're going to tell her that she has to go out, which is what she does now, and illegally buy it? She's got to make herself a criminal to get something that gives her relief? That doesn't make any sense. It is up to us to somehow safely and legally provide her a way to access that medicine. And we can do it. We can do it.
Senator, you're bumping time. Senator from Richland.
Two things I'd like to ask unanimous consent to give the Senator 10 more minutes.
Is an objection?
Well, if not, I'd
Objection,
like
sir.
to have a question for Senator Wilson. 5 minutes from the Senator. 2 minutes. Will the Senator yield for a question?
Senator yields for a question.
Lenient just
Thank you, Senator. Senator, isn't it true that this bill has broad bipartisan support including the support from, I think, the only person in this body who serves as a pastor.
I appreciate you've been a supporter, Senator Jackson, and you shared with me some of your stories as to why you have that support.
And some of
appreciate
those
them.
stories not only involve parishioners, but even on a more personal note, family member who moved here from another state who eventually died of a chronic illness that really was very, very, very painful. And he was told that if we had this legislation, that his life, at the end of his life, I'm not saying it would have prolonged his life, but it would have been more enjoyable. I think I shared that story.
You did.
One of the most painful things is being there when a young man in his early 40s was dying, and his family members flown in from all over the country looked at it and says that our only regret is that towards the end of his life, I wish it would have been more enjoyable. And he looked over and he said, because he was my first cousin, he says, "Darryl, you tried." And I promised him that I would never stop trying. I then approached you and said, not only am I supporting, because I was there on medical affairs when Scott Richardson's wife came to testify. I said to you then that I'll do everything in my power to try to help get this bill passed and hope and pray that another 42-year-old young man would not die in excruciating pain simply because this state would not allow him the benefit, knowing that although he knew he was dying, but at least to enjoy the final days of his life in less pain. Thank you, Senator, for what you've done.
Thank you, Senator.
Statewide second reading bill, Senator from Lawrence, Senator Verdon, what purpose do you rise?
What personal interest?
You recognize, sir.